You're listening to Worshipology with Curtis Parks, a biblical, practical, and spiritual conversation about living and leading worship. Today's episode is brought to you by PraiseCharts. Worship leaders and pastors, are you looking for the best new worship songs to introduce to your church? From Phil Wickham to Elevation, Passion, and Maverick City, PraiseCharts has the latest ready to go. Whether you need chord charts, lead sheets, or full orchestrations, everything is formatted for your team and available for instant download. Stay current, save time, and lead with confidence. Check out PraiseCharts.com today and get your hands on the freshest songs for Sunday.
Well, hey, thanks so much for listening to the Worshipology podcast. This is a biblical, practical, spiritual conversation all about living and leading worship. And man, today I have Aaron Keys on the podcast. Say what's up, man.
Oh, this is going to be fun. I'm excited to reconnect with you.
Oh, absolutely, man. And Aaron, I mean, dude, it's not often that I get to talk to leaders that I would say have been a massive influence on my life and just how I not just lead worship, but really live out my worship. And bro, I'll never forget, I want to say it was 2012 when we were at a Catalyst conference down in Atlanta, and you were leading worship, man. And I just never seen anybody just kind of spit out scripture and lead not just songs, but really through scripture. And I mean, dude, you talk all the time about like, we need worship pastors, not just worship leaders. You're truly one of those guys. And it's an honor for me to have you on this podcast, man. Wow. And excited to see how God uses this conversation, bro. But
thank
dude,
you, Curtis.
Thank you for your leadership, man. And just how you model it so well with your family. And you guys are crushing it out there in Colorado, dude. For those who may not know Aaron Keys, dude, how'd you get started in all this stuff with ministry and worship and songwriting, raising leaders, the whole 9 yards, man?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, buddy. I appreciate the kind words, and I always loved connecting with you, with Mark, the whole NCC crew back in the day. That was a sweet season that I really thank God for, and it still bears fruit. So This is really fun for me. My dad was a pastor. His dad was a pastor. I guess I was kind of fated to do that. My brother did it too.
All right.
Not a lot of thought went into it. It was more just like, hey, God's using me at my college campus. And so me and some friends started a little worship night our junior year of college, and it ended up growing into this really cool thing. It was called Underground Worship. It ran for several years after I graduated. Just kids from all over the state of South Carolina, North Carolina would drive down. We'd start at 11 p.m. We'd go till 2 or 3 in the morning. Hundreds of kids, literally coming into these worship nights. And all the only kind of thing bringing us all together, aside from like singing and praying, was like, hey, we're all from different denominations and different campus ministries or different, backgrounds, but we're not going to have like a sermon. There's not going to be skits. We're just going to worship and pray. And to start every night, I'll just share like a couple minutes of something from the Bible that I've been learning about worship. So every now and then I'd bring like some people in to kick that thing off. But for the most part, it was like, hey, I'll take 3 minutes, 4 minutes and say, here's what we're doing tonight. Tonight we're going to lift our hands in worship. And here's some of the verses that I've been thinking about. Psalm 134, lift your hands in the sanctuary, bless the Lord. Psalm 63, I'll praise you as long as I live. In your name, I'll lift my hands. Psalm 28, hear the voice of my supplication as I call to you for help and lift up my hands to your most holy place. So whatever it was, like, whether it's kneeling, it's lifting our hands, it's singing a new song, whatever it was, like, couple minutes to talk about this is what we're going to press into tonight, and then a couple hours to press into that. And so that's kind of where it started. I was never much of a singer. I was a classical piano player. Like I studied classical piano and then played jazz. And so it was all pretty sloppy musically. We had a couple djembes, a couple guitar, hammered dulcimer, I think.
Let's go.
And so like there was never any like cool factor. It was never like big production. And so I kind of like just stumbled my way from that vantage and starting point into what I did for the next long while of, cool sound and dynamic performance ain't going to be what keeps the people coming. It's going to actually have to be, for us, it's going to have to be something pastoral, biblical, something powerful or personal. And so that's just kind of what I doubled down on and devoted myself to, like, I want to understand as much as I can about the worship of God through the Word of God. And that sort of set me apart, I guess, from what was kind of the normal milieu back in like 2000, where worship was becoming pretty cool. It was becoming pretty popular. It was kind of right at the beginning of, like, if you were a big CCM band and you wanted to keep on the road and making money, you kind of started putting out worship music, and
right.
I was never any of those things. I was just like an ardent student of the Bible, probably which came from my dad being an ardent teacher of the Bible. And I just was like, well, I'll just teach people the Bible through music, and we'll kind of lead people through music with the Bible. So that's kind of where it all started. We ended up spending 20 years as a worship pastor at a church in Atlanta called Grace Fellowship. That was when I used to travel and write songs and lead worship at conferences, things like Catalyst, a lot of stuff overseas. Somewhere along the way, more and more pastors started asking if I might know anyone that they could consider for a worship pastor for their position at their church, because I heard a lot of the same things from a lot of places, like, hey, we've got great musicians and great singers. We've even got good, like, organizers for our team. We just don't have shepherds. Like, we don't have pastors who know how to lead our people. And do you know anyone that you could train to do that? And so my wife and I bought a house where we could train people sort of 6 months at a time, 12 months at a time. And so we had people just come and live with us and do kind of radical discipleship. We did that for about 5 years. More and more people wanted to come move into our house, even some of them with spouses and kids. And we were like, okay, we got to change this model. So we switched it to being more cohort based instead of residency. We've had people stay in our home and live with us for many, many years. We've been married 25 years this summer, and hospitality is like my wife's biggest thing. Yeah, it's cool, dude. I love who we've become because we've been married to each other. We were just talking about that at Valentine's. But so discipleship, scripture, formation, our real life, this is where everything just kind of settled down for us. Like, anyone can say anything. Like, social media has really proven that. Anyone can say anything. Anyone can say they believe anything or think anything or know anything. And to me, it's like, gosh, the dilution of real wisdom and truth and knowledge is so dispersed at this point that it's so thin. I'm like, what's solid? What someone says, what they say they believe. And to me, I'm like, that's all just like ephemeral vapor to me. The only thing I really put much stock in is how someone is, how they live. Wow. Like, what is their life like? Not what do they say their life is like? What do they, what is their life?
What's the actual fruit?
Yeah, what is their life show they believe? Like, not what do they say they believe? Because, I mean, you and I both know, like, we can say something today and think something totally different tomorrow, but your whole way of life probably isn't going to change overnight. And I think that your way of being shows what you actually believe deep down, not the way you talk about it. And so that's why we loved kind of having people in our home, because I'm not like the best Bible teacher or anything like that, but we could at least show people our real life. And it was interesting because every time we do exit interviews, like, what was most helpful? Because we'd have people like Mark Batterson or like Chris Tomlin or Matt Redman. And these guys speak to our students, and then I would teach them the Bible all the time. And we'd ask them, like, what was most transformative in your journey? You know, we just want to know. And everyone said the same thing. And they always said, just being in your home, just being in your community. That was the most powerful thing. And I guess it goes to show how we always sort of take for granted, you know, what we're just accustomed to or habituated to. But that real day-to-day relational, hospitable, communal stuff, to me, that's just like that's gold. And just because it's not glamorous doesn't mean it's not glorious, you know? And like confusing those two things, I think, is one of the things that has become, you know, it's gotten into mainstream worship, and when
Yeah.
mainstream worship is showing up on the Grammys and the red carpet, categories start getting really blurry. And so
Wow.
just thinking carefully and scripturally and really slowly about what is this doing to our formation and our way of being? What does it do to us when we realize that to succeed as a worship songwriter means you're probably going to stop working at your church because you're going to need to be on tour 300 days a year? Like,
wow.
that has some intrinsic tensions that are just worth pointing out. They're not necessarily bad, there's no indictment. It's just like,
You have to question it. You have to question motive. You have to question reality. And then I love what you were talking about, just like the idea of like, who are we becoming? Who are we being? Because at the end of the day, that speaks way more volumes than anything you can post online and what can be, miscommunicated or misunderstood. And as you were sharing, Aaron, I'm just reminded of the verse, 1 Thessalonians 2:8. It talks about how we not only shared with you the gospel, but our own lives as well.
Yeah.
And I think there's something powerful to that in this day and age where, it's easy to share clips and snippets of yourself with the big public, but it's very hard to share your own life with even just a few people. How have you guys done that? I mean, you and of course, like the 10,000 Fathers community. I mean, I just remember getting an opportunity to kind of rub shoulders with some of you guys when I lived in Nashville, because Atlanta wasn't that far away. And man, what did that look like on a practical level? Like for a worship leader or worship team that's maybe listening to this, and they're like, man, what's one step that we can take to get back to that communal sense of like leadership, discipleship, mentorship, even friendship, Aaron?
Yeah, well, I think the number one word I would use was how it looked was messy. It was just not sexy. It was not smooth. It was clunky and real. But that's just like real relationships, if you think about how the early church had a regular rhythm of going from the temple to their homes, I spent my whole life kind of doing the temple thing. And I think all of us are intrinsically sensing these days, it's not enough. The temple thing's just not enough. It's why, like, once a church gets to a few hundred people, they got to introduce small groups because everyone knows,
right.
This is not doing what it's what it was designed to do. Like, go over to Israel, man. Hang out at the ruins of like where the early church met. They were people's homes, right? And some of them were pretty big homes. Like Peter's mother-in-law, she was pretty loaded, it seems like, but that you couldn't fit 1,000 people in a living room. And so when Paul says in 1 Corinthians, like, hey, if you got a song, come sing it. If you got a need, let's pray. If you have thanksgiving, give it. If you have a word, share it. Like that stuff makes sense in a small group. It doesn't make sense in a room with 1,000. And so again, not to disparage 1,000 people or more, but it does present, there are now practical concerns that are untenable once you add this many people. And so there's no moral judgment of it. It's just an empirical observation. Okay, once you add this many people, there are some practical things that no longer work. And so, all that we were doing by just bringing people into our home and then having a bunch of friends move into the neighborhoods around us, we're just like, let's try to actually live out day to day what we sing about week to week. Like, we're really, let's think about it. Like, how many songs do you know? Thank God for, let's say, forgiving us of our sin, versus how many songs do you know that talk about how we're going to become a forgiving people too? We're going to forgive. How many songs thank God for being this loving Father who's welcomed us in, versus how many songs call us to be welcoming to the world around us? Like, it's just so tempting for us to feel good about all that God's done for us without actually having to become good or become like him and modeling the stuff that we admire him for, And to me, that doesn't work. Like, we can say that we're worshiping God. I think that God's probably more glorified by the kindness people show in their neighborhoods than the exuberance of their praise on Sunday morning. Not to, again, it's such a false dichotomy for even to say it like that. But I think we've for so long, we've so deeply over-indexed on Sunday that we've got to get back to. And I think it's one of the reasons why, like, the common competencies in the the pastoral epistles, the only common competencies that it talks about needing to have for a leader in the church are encouraging people in sound doctrine. So know the Bible and hospitality, like have an open life,
Yeah.
And what's just interesting is how even with like the rise of AI right now, and the prominence of social media and how, we have an epidemic of loneliness according to our Surgeon General. It's like,
right.
I think the need for real, true human connection and belonging and being known and being loved. And I think about, like, I grew up as a pastor's kid. Shame was like my second language. I remember in a Christian school, I got out of line one time. I was second grade. My teacher said, "Shame on you." I have never forgotten that, bro, because it did get onto me. It got into me. And the thing about something like shame is it drives you away. You go high. So Adam sinned. Yeah. He and Eve were ashamed. They hid from God. I think that the loneliness, the artificialness of our generation, the surfaceness of social media, it's just like stoking the fires of real longing for everyone, dude, not just believers, but for everyone, for true knowingness. That's not a word, but you know what I mean? Like true.
No, I think you just invented it, bro. It's so
true,
good.
Like knownness and intimacy. And the fear of shame that drove most of my life was like, if people really knew, then they would reject me. Right. Yeah. But in real community, no, it's actually, I love your flaws as much as I love your highlights. Like, it's what makes you, I think about, who was it? Like, one of the greats said, like, the true gift of the other is their otherness. And making a space for people to be who they really are. And not only to be, like, loved in spite of who they are, but gosh, I actually love you because of who you are, like clunky and weird and quirky and all that stuff. That's what, like, I think that's what the early church would have looked like. It would have looked like a messy family reunion, not a really slick production, Like, I don't even know if they actually, I don't know if I have confidence that they really modeled the stuff that they were trying to, but like, it was radical what they were trying to do. Like, in this room, there's no slave and no free, no man, no woman, no Jew, no Gentile. No, it's like, whoa,
completely
leave it
countercultural
all at the door. I don't know if they ever got there, like maybe they did. But what an amazing thing to aspire to.
Wow.
And so anyway, like these days, so we did discipleship like that for 15, 16 years through our worship school that we started. We've both stepped away from that now. My wife's a counselor, a licensed professional counselor she's about 30 clients a week here in Colorado Springs. And she's just doing what she's always done. She's holding space for people to get breakthrough and healing and to have a different future. And it's so fun because she spent a few years getting her degree and all that. And now she's very powerfully serving so many people. I get to hold space for people in business a lot of times. I still work with a lot of worship pastors, a lot of churches, but it's all through a coaching framework now. And coaching was kind of the whole drive of our community for all those years at worship school too. But I've just doubled down on, like, I want to become the most powerful ally anyone has ever experienced, and fearlessly advocating for a better future for them. And when it comes to worship leadership, because I for 25 years, I was a worship pastor. I was on stage every week, multiple times, wrote and record and blah, blah, blah. Like, for the last 5 years, I've been really spending a lot more time in the marketplace. So I've worked in 5 years in a mortgage career, several years in an executive coaching career. I still love worship. I still love when I get to lead worship. I just don't do it as a career anymore. I do it as like it's fun. It's like, I just enjoy it. But when I do it, I'm coming from a different perspective. And
talk about that. Yeah, talk about that. That's I'd love to hear 25 years as a worship pastor, and of course, not to discredit, man, you're a baller songwriter too. I mean, I remember and I want to dive into this a little bit later, but writing songs that need to be written. Okay. So I think, you hit it on the head when you're talking about, man, it feels like a lot of the songs that are coming out kind of say the same thing without saying the exact same thing, but it kind of sounds like similar. And then, but I remember the song Sovereign Over Us. And the first time I heard it, I was like, man, there's just a beautiful, there's not a lot of, smoke and mirrors here, man. And seeing, of course, the video where you guys were in the home and you're playing, and there's a cello and there's candles, and I'm like, oh man, but even now, I mean, obviously, the song Abide is really just taken off, and the message behind it is so beautiful. I mean, abide in the vine, the whole idea that Jesus is just calling us to just be in him. I love the fact that now talk to me, like, today, is it like a rhythm that you're writing songs, or is it just kind of when the inspiration strikes? What does that look like?
No, it's all relational to me. Like, my favorite thing about songwriting was always collaborating with people. And to get real specific, I think my favorite thing that I can offer a song is how can we make this from a B+ to an A- maybe? Like, I want to, I just want to help, like, make it, I want to maximize it. And I don't think that my best gift is like originality and creativity and like coming up with brilliant ideas from scratch. I don't think that's my best thing. Like, I've done that. I just don't think that's where I have much to offer. I think where I can offer more is send me a song that you've got 80% and let me see if I can get it to 100. And let's see.
Nice.
And the reason that that's so fun for me to do now is because I had people do that for me 15 years ago, and I remember I wrote a song with some friends like Pat Barrett and some of these guys from Exodus 15, the song on Moses. We had it. We were singing it at our church. It felt pretty powerful. I sent it to one of my mentors and he said, "This is a good song. I wonder if it could be a great song." He said, "Graham Kendrick might be able to make this a great song." So we all agreed that let's send it to Graham. And Graham sent us back ideas. And we all got together. We were like, shoot, we never could have come up with that. That's so much better than we could have come up with. And so we took some of his ideas, incorporated them. He became a writer on the song. Some of his ideas we didn't love as much. We kept some of ours. But it was like, at that point, no matter how many hours we all beat our heads against the wall, we could not have come up with ideas as good as his. He was battle tested. He was in his 50s, And so I am not at that level where he was back then, but I am closer to it than I was back then. And so I love being able to, I still help a lot of writers finish their songs. And my friend Micah Massey has a couple songs coming out in the next couple months.
Oh, love Micah.
I helped write on a couple of those. I love getting to help friends write their songs. I just have no ambition to like be a writer myself anymore. I think somewhere along the way I immaturely, naively, and unhealthily attached, like, I hitched up the American dream to worship songwriting. And I just expected, because Michael W. put out Sovereign and people wanted to release some of my songs, and I was like, ooh, maybe one of these will like be our retirement and get our kids through college. And dude, I don't know what to do about that. I mean, I'll just be honest about it. I think it screwed me up. I think like attaching the American dream to ministry kind of screwed up my head a little bit. And not like it does everyone, but for me, I think I just started expecting God to kind of do things for us financially that never really came to fruition. And it came to fruition for a lot of my friends. And I love that it did for my friends. I was confused why none of that really worked for my songs. And I had to be honest about the fact that, I don't think this is like a God problem. I think this is a me problem. And until I can write from a pure place where I don't have the American dream, like hitched up to every songwriting project I do, I might need to take a break from songwriting. So for a few years, I did take a break from songwriting.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I also just didn't love like who I was becoming. Go back to the way of being. Like,
Wow.
so I met someone and they were like, hey, I wrote a song. Would you mind listening? I was like, sure. They sent it to me. This is maybe 3 years ago, dude. And
Okay.
I listened and I was just thinking, the song sucks. You suck. Why did you waste my time? And then I'm like aware of how critical
cynical
I'd become.
and critical. Yeah.
I'm like, this isn't who I want to be. I don't want to be like a expert who's just ripping people apart. I want to be like an enthusiast for this dude. I want to champion this guy. I want to help this guy. And so that's when I realized, ooh, something's off in me. I should probably like figure out how to address this before I keep operating like business as usual. And
it does take a lot of maturity to be able to recognize that, hey, this is not who I want to be. This is not who I'm called to be. And I would just, I think a lot of listeners are probably resonating with getting to that place where you can become more of a cynic than a cheerleader for people. And how do you fight cynicism in a day and age where it just seems like it's everywhere and it's so like crouching at your door?
Gosh, man, I think it's through self-awareness. I think real self-awareness brings a lot of humility. And like, a lot of the coaching that I do these days with teams and with individuals gets into this. Like, it's easy to be cynical, just like it's easy to be proud if you're really blind to your own weaknesses. And and you're blind to your own idiosyncrasies, right? But it's hard to stay cynical or cocky if you account for your own foibles too. And so, I've just really, and bro, like a lot of this stuff it really operates in blind spots for people. And so in a way, it's kind of not their fault. Like they're not choosing to be blind to this stuff. They might be making choices that keep the blindness persistent. And that's the thing, like belonging to a coaching firm and being in a life with a lot of people who I am very honest with about wanting feedback. It's hard to stay naive around this kind of a community where I just tell people, like, if you see ways that I'm getting in my way, would you tell me? And I've got a deep core need to look good. Probably grew up from being in church my whole life, fundamentalism, got to look the right part, and then from being on stage 25 years and then being a pastor, like I like looking good, not physically. I mean, just like morally. I mean, looking good professionally. I want to look good intellectually, all this stuff. And these days, bro, I'm sending my coaching calls to a ton of other coaches saying, rip me apart. And they send me feedback and it stings. God, it stings. But what it stings is my immature need to look good, you know? And I feel like if you put antiseptic on your arm, but there's not a cut, it doesn't sting. If there's a cut, it stings because there's a wound there that needs to be cleaned. And if the worse it stings, the more I probably need it. In that sense, right? And so
that's so good. I'm
trying to just like kick my immaturity in the teeth. I feel like 2025, I've told several people in my firm this is the year for me to just grow. I think I got into executive coaching after coaching a lot of ministry leaders for a long time. I think I came into executive coaching feeling like, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for a long time. And these days I'm like, I'm not saying I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm saying I can't wait to get better than I am. And I will do whatever it takes to become the best possible partner I can with anyone that I work with. Because, sheesh, dude, I want my vision for my family and my vision for who I am as a friend and a man after God and my vision for myself as a dad. I want my vision determining my behavior, not my ego or my like blind spots. And so if I've got this like core need to look good I mean, another one is I have this core need to feel good. I'm very well aware. Like if I go through a stressful meeting, after that meeting, I just start scrolling Instagram and I'm not even paying attention. I'm just scrolling. I'm like, what am I doing? Oh, I'm trying to self-regulate by getting a dopamine hit. And that's how pathetic. Sorry, I'm trying not to judge myself. See, that's how practiced I am at self-regulating. I go use social media to calm myself down when I'm dysregulated. So just becoming aware of that kind of stuff. So that kind of awareness really, it makes it hard for me to be as cynical as I have been when I was less self-aware, because I'm like, oh gosh, I've got so much stuff I'm working on in my own interior being that I'm like, I got a lot of grace for other people who hopefully are working on theirs too.
Wow. I mean, dude, the best book I read all of last year was The Self-Aware Leader by John Maxwell. And there's just like so much gold in there, because I do think that once you, what is it? Like, you're pointing the finger at one person while you got four pointing back at you. It's like, it just really just tears down any assumption that you're better than others, that you have everything figured out. And I mean, as well as I do, when you sit under great leadership, and I mean, guys like my pastor now is phenomenal with this, Brian Briggs, but and Mark Batterson was too, where it's like, you'll gather people in a room, and it's like everybody's there, and they're like, okay, teach us, Mark, or teach us, Pastor Brian, and it's like, no, I gather all of us here. What can we learn from each other? And it just completely disarms you, because you're like, oh wow, like they're not coming at this as the expert, but they're also a student, even with all the wisdom they have, knowing that there's always another level to grow to. And I just resonate with you on that, man. I do think like 2025, a lot of leaders are hungry to get better. And dude, I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier, because I think it's so unique to your story, having been a worship pastor for 25 years, written phenomenal songs, and then now you kind of get this opportunity in this season of your life where it's like, I get to lead more for fun, or I get to lead, as a, what does that look like? Like, it's not your full-time career, but talk about the perspective that's brought you in your worship leading, where it's like, you probably don't have a Monday meeting where you're in any kind of evaluation, or maybe you do. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I'm in lots of weekly meetings. We're just not evaluating how loud people were singing. We're evaluating metrics and a lot of other things. Yeah, dude, I think the biggest change for how I would approach a worship session now that I'm leading is, whereas a few years ago, one of the primary things I would be kind of thinking about as I'm designing it and then leading people through it and reflecting on it, I would be thinking about, like, were they thoughtfully engaged? Like, was this a healthy balance of what we were doing? And was there something fresh in it? Was there something grounded and rooted and blah, blah, blah? So I like all those criteria. I wouldn't like chuck those criteria by any means, but I would definitely add a new one that I was not thinking about as much back then. And that is like, what are the second order effects of everything that we just did? And we won't know those until a few days from now, a few weeks from now. But like, what dominoes got set off in people's lives because of what we just did? So instead of putting all the kind of pressure on this moment to be so like revolutionary in their life, and it's interesting because a lot of like the biggest songs these days, or maybe it's just, maybe this is just sort of anecdotal because of the kind of people that I hang with, but a lot of the biggest songs that I'm seeing are kind of all about this moment. Like, it's all about what God's going to do in this room, in this time. Anything is possible. God can do anything in this place. We've got all this faith, and I don't want to like dissuade anyone from any of that, but I definitely think there's more going on than just what we're seeing in this room. And I'm sort of embarrassed to admit, like, being on staff at church for 25 years, I think I never would have said this, but I would have subtly just felt like, what happens on Sunday is really the most important, like, part of your week if you come to our church. And And I was really hedged and like really protected from day-to-day reality for people who just worked in business. And that's where things have really flipped. So for the last 5 years, working in banking, or working, I mean, dude, I've sat in my office at the bank and heard powerful ministry happening down the hall. Like a lot of the guys who work in my bank were all like powerful believers or elders in their churches and stuff. And I just had no idea. I mean, dude, I feel like embarrassed talking about
Life
this.
exists outside of Sunday morning.
Yeah. Like powerful ministry exists outside of Sunday.
Yeah.
And again, not to disparage Sunday whatsoever, but to say like, there's powerful stuff happening out there. And there are really difficult challenges that people are facing outside of our church walls that it was hard for me being inside the church walls for so long, kind of for my whole life and upbringing, to be even very cognizant of that. And so I'm training some engineers 2 weeks ago in San Francisco, and I'm sitting with them and I'm asking them what's really going on and what are they facing. And this is right after all these tariffs have been announced with our new president.
Right.
And it was just so funny because like it really affects their bottom line. It affects their operations. It affects their state of mind. And it for decades, things like that could have happened. And I'd be like, who cares? It doesn't matter to me. You know? And so now when I lead, if I'm leading people in worship, I think I'm just coming in with a much more heightened conscientiousness to people's day-to-day reality who don't work at a church. And what people's lives are really like who didn't spend 2 hours preparing songs before this service and thinking about the lyrics and reflecting on, what they mean. So I'm just way more interested now in is what we're doing here helping people win? And probably just because like I spend most of my time coaching people now, I don't think most coaches care if I don't think a football coach cares if the running back likes practice. I think he cares if the team wins. And I think he cares like if the team's not winning, let's figure out why, and so as a coach now, instead of just like a player in a sense, I'm just interested in like, is this helping you win? And I'm like a little scared to answer that question honestly when I reflect on a lot of what I did. Because bro, the marriage, like divorce rates, not great. Like what I see again, it's anecdotal. It's not like scientific, but what I'm seeing, it doesn't seem like we're winning. It seems like we're having great practices. Why aren't we winning? Why aren't more people just radically merciful and charitable and generous and hospitable? Why does it seem like we're singing more than ever and angrier than ever? How does that work?
Wow.
Right? Like,
yikes.
Again, no, I'm not trying to say like, oh, everything sucks and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, I recognize
it's a sheer observation. Yeah.
And dude, I recognize it in me. And so I'm just really curious now about what are the second order effects of singing this song? What does it do to you after 3 years, and what does it form in you? Even like, I'm thinking about that with everything. Like you said, congratulations for being married 25 years. I don't say that anymore automatically. If someone says I'm married 50 years, I don't go, congratulations. I say, who'd you become because of being married to this person for 50 years? Because I don't take for granted that you like who you became. And so I'm just really interested in like, and so what did that create? And what did that produce? And really, to take it all back to where we started, it's like, in your way of being, what did that mean? How did that change you? And I'm just so mindful of that kind of stuff these days. And I want to become really sober-minded about what's going on in me and not naive to that or blinded to that. Like, think about like a train on tracks. Like there's a driver kind of accelerating, decelerating these trains, but there's someone else kind of switching the tracks and kind of controlling where this thing goes. These days, I'm just more interested in like, what was really pulling the levers in my story? Was it really, I sensed God's calling on me, and that's why I led on stage for all those years? Or it was there like a need to look good, And
Wow.
was there like a sense of feeling powerful? I'm not trying to like second guess or psychoanalyze, but I am wanting to be self-aware and be honest.
Right.
That
Right.
like, I'm sure there was some ego in there somewhere,
Yeah.
And
No, it's good to know where you've been and why you've been there, because if you are future minded, it's like, okay, maybe that's a blind spot I need to be aware of in this next season of knowing myself and knowing my, the potential red flags and the triggers and the things in my own heart that, I was just having a conversation with another worship leader last week where, I was asking him like, man, what has God really been putting on repeat in your prayer life? And he said, man, I know that I need to close the gap between the public image of me and the private image of me, where it's like, and I was like, man, I'm still kind of chewing on that, where it's like, this is what people see, but this is who I am. And the bigger distance in between those two people, it's my job to close that gap. Like, I don't want to be somebody different just because I've got a microphone in front of me. I want to lead out of the authenticity, and the vulnerability even of where I am with Christ. And, it doesn't mean you're bleeding all over people as you lead them, but it does mean, this idea of, hey, it's not, you don't serve anybody in the body of Christ by being fake, And so I think what you're saying is hitting the nail on the head when it comes to authenticity, which is needed more today than ever, man. And I just appreciate, I feel like we could probably have 4 more of these conversations and just be scratching the surface, man. Well, dude, let me ask you this in our just remaining few minutes, man. I love asking this question to worship leaders, and certainly, somebody that has really inspired my faith and how I lead, man. What's the Lord speaking to you right now? What's the Holy Spirit just resonating in your heart these days, Aaron?
Oh, it's probably about just rediscovering vision. I think ministry kind of put me on autopilot for vision for a good 25 years. And not being in full-time ministry now, it's like, okay, well, what do you want now? And I think I was just just kind of cruise control on life vision, just take what happens. I'm pretty easy going, like flow with things. But the more that, especially it's I'm sure attributed to being a part of the coaching firm that I am, but like we really take vision seriously. And we just sort of define vision as like, what's a picture of the future that's crystal clear, it produces passion in you, and it's worth the cost of transformation. Reconnecting to that is a big deal. And I kind of bumped into it, or kind of backed into it through Hebrews 12, where it's like faith's being sure of what you hope for and certain of what you can't see. I'm like, oh, what do I have faith for now? Like what am I really fighting for now? It's not just to like sell a few more mortgages or like to coach a few more people, like what do I really want? And I don't denigrate that anymore. I don't denigrate my agency. I think that part of being made in the image of God is exercising imaginative agency. And I've never heard many people talk about that, but like my dogs don't have much vision for who they want to be. And Pikes Peak doesn't have, I don't think, a conscious vision for what it wants to do in Colorado Springs. But like I can come up with a vision for my kids and create a future that affects their grandkids. Like that's amazing agency. And it's one of the biggest differences between the ministry leaders that I coach and the business leaders that I coach, where the business leaders, it's very easy for them to tell me what they want. I literally sat with one a couple months ago. He's like, I want a new Ford Raptor. I want this. And I'm like, all right, how much does that cost? It's like $150,000. I'm like, cool, let's put it down. And it's so funny how easy it is for people outside of the church to tell me what they want, and then how slippery people get inside the church when I ask them, what do you want? Tell me what you want. And I think it's not a small thing that Jesus asked multiple people, what do you want? One of them was a blind person. Shouldn't it be obvious? But like, I think Jesus gave us desire and agency and dreams. And I don't think he does that to tease us, I think that he does that to lead us, actually. And once a vision is clear, it kind of gets its own gravitational pull, where it now pulls me into even new practices. So someone who has a vision to, I don't know, run a marathon, all of a sudden that vision starts pulling them to get their running shoes on and go for a jog. I can tell every year around September, October, I start doing a lot more leg days in the gym because I'm like, snowboard season's coming. Like I've got a vision for it, right? And I think so many people that I've seen, and I've been this way so many times, the vision's vague or it's small. And so we're just going through these disciplines and these patterns and these practices, but we've kind of lost a lot of the fire and the why and the reconnection to the desire. And so I'm just really reconnecting to all of that. And dude, I have a big vision for like the kind of person I want to be. And I think that's important because like, I don't think time and the passage of time just naturally serves most people in becoming a version of themselves that they love. It seems like, and unfortunately, I don't even see like a lot of church activity mitigating that. Not like it's denigrating it, but I don't see it fixing it intrinsically. It's like, because the question that I'm always asking clients, and now I'm asking myself, is great. We've got a clear, huge vision. Then the question is, so who would you need to become in order to realize that vision? What would that person be doing? Because that's what we're going to start doing. And so it sort of determines like my behavior in a way where historically that vision was vague or it was just more Jesus. And now it's like, no, let's make this vision more vivid, more colorful, because the more clear and specific we can make it, the more compelling and powerful it is in my own life. So I want to live that kind of life in front of people. Like my parenting strategy for all these years, for all of our mistakes, was just like, let's show our kids a life worth wanting. And because like I never wanted my dad's life. It didn't look awesome to me. But I want my kids to want my life. I think like that's the beginning of discipleship. Is like discipleship requires that someone wants your life, and Lord knows if you don't want it, no one else is going to. So like I want to model for my kids a life where following Jesus is like the most unbelievable adventure you've ever imagined, That's so good. And so if I can live that, not just by myself, but like in my marriage, as a parent, then I think with authenticity and some authority, I can call other people into that. And that's my favorite thing. And that's my favorite thing in the world, bro. I love like reawakening wonder in a disenchanted age in people who are burned out or bored out of their minds, and creating experiences where they can tap into stuff they never even thought was possible. This is what I love to do.
Man, I think you're speaking to me, because I really do feel like there is such a disconnect when it comes to vision, which is really just the preferred future of your life, right? And if we can establish that, whether we're in ministry or whatever area of life that you're in, it's okay to have a vision. And I love that you said get specific about it. It's like, man, you're not gonna hit the target if you can't define what that is. And if you hit it and you don't know what it is, then that's not success. And I feel like there's a lot of gold in there, man. And bro, I'm gonna be chewing on this for some moments to come here, dude.
Let me say one more thing about that. So it's not only that you won't hit the target, it's that you won't get to experience the growth that you could have if you'd put yourself on the hook for getting progress and traction against your vision. So like if you have a vision for 2025, I want my marriage to be happier. All right, well, that's first of all, that's vague as crap. And so it's a defense mechanism to leave it vague, because that way, 6 months from now, if I call you and say, Curtis, is your marriage happier? You're going to be like, I think so.
I think,
Because we'll just give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. As opposed to, no, here's what I want my marriage to look like in measurable, specific ways that then we can track and go, are you on track? Or are you off track?
Wow.
And there's no judgment in any of that. It's just like, no, let's start putting ourselves on the hook. Like, I just believe like growth happens best on the hook. And we get more joy in life from growth than through accomplishing, actually. And so with my clients, like, don't tell them, I kind of don't care if they reach their vision. I care about who they get to become en route. And vision is the kind of thing where it's malleable. Like, because actually you can only have this vision from where you're sitting right now, but 6 months from now, if your whole mindset has changed and you've got new practices and disciplines, and you're more self-aware, and so you're less reactive, and you're more humble because you're less blind to your blind spots. If you've got all that stuff, chances are your vision's going to shift a little bit. That's fine. It's actually not about reaching it or hitting the target, to use your words. It's about who we get to become on the way, and what that means for the people all around us. So that's where stuff gets so exciting, and that's why, like, I just love what I'm doing now more than I've ever loved anything I ever did, because I get a front row seat in the lives of all these people, and first and foremost, I get one in my own life.
I love it, man. Well, I might have to add a Ford Raptor to my vision statement.
Yeah, if you want one, bro, let's go get you one.
That thing is awesome, dude. Well, man, I think I love what you and Megan are doing. Your family's an inspiration, man, and you're just somebody who has. I just think of the Eugene Peterson quote: "Long obedience in the same direction," man, and you're inspiring, man. We're gonna put some links on our show notes, aaronkeys.com, if you're interested in coaching or connecting with Aaron. Oh man,
bro, it's so fun to reconnect.
I always want to say thank you for just your contribution on my book, Worshipology, because your 2 sentences would outweigh my 200 pages, and so I appreciate you, man. Listen, dude.
Well, thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for having me on here, bro. I'll always want to say yes to any way I can support you.
I appreciate you, brother.
Likewise, Curtis. Bless you, man.
You've been listening to Worshipology with Curtis Parks. To connect or learn more, visit curtisparks.com. This episode was brought to you by your friends at PraiseCharts.com. Whether you need simple chord charts, lead sheets, vocal arrangements, full orchestrations, or stems, we've got it all ready to download instantly. Plus, their affordable bundles and flexible formats save you time and money, so you can focus on leading worship and not scrambling for resources. If you haven't checked them out yet, now is the time. Visit PraiseCharts.com and get everything you need for your worship team today.